Sir Keir Starmer is set to accuse the Tories of 7 years of broken migration promises during a keynote speech today, marking 4 years since the 2019 general election, which Labour, of course, lost. He's also expected to claim to have restored the Labour Party to the service of working people.
Well, the Labour leader is live in Buckinghamshire. Sir Keir Starmer, welcome to the programme.
Good morning.
How do we stop the boats?
Oh, we have to stop the boats. I mean, nobody should accept these terrible crossings across the Channel. I think the most effective way to stop the boats is to smash the criminal gangs, and they are criminal gangs, that are running this vile trade and putting people in the boats in the first place. And as you know, before I became a politician, I was the chief prosecutor for England and Wales, and I was involved in joint operations with other countries to smash, in my case, terrorist gangs and gangs of people that were involved in human trafficking. I know this can be done, and I think we have to stop people making that journey in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's the ideal, of course, is to stop them making the journey. Of course, what the government wants to do is it wants to deter them by saying that they would then be flown to Rwanda. Now, what they say is that you would seek a deal with the EU where we would accept our fair, proportionate share of migrants here in order to be able to tackle migration. Is that the case? Because I remember back in September, you told The Times, we'll ultimately seek an EU-wide returns agreement for asylum seekers who come to Britain, and that the quid pro quo of any deal, such as accepting quotas of migrants from the EU, will be up for negotiation with Brussels. We exited the returns agreement we're in. We've never replaced it. And we'll make sure we're the ones determining who come to this country. The Conservatives say that could see 100,000 extra arrivals. Is that the case?
No, they're making that up as they go along. I'll be very clear what I want to see. I do want to see those gangs smashed so that people don't arrive in the first place. And I know it can be done because I spent 5 years of my life on similar operations. Secondly, I want to see those that do arrive processed. Now, this will be astonishing, I think, for anybody watching. Of all the people that arrived by small boat in the last year or so, only 1% have had their claim actually processed. That is intolerable. And then thirdly, and directly on your point, where people do have their claims processed and they fail, they should be swiftly removed to where they came from. And that does require us to have an agreement with other countries so that we can send people back to where they came from. They are practical things, they're mundane things, I accept that. What I won't accept is a £290 million gimmick that is intended to send about 100 people to Rwanda at best. Given there's 160,000 people who haven't had their claims processed, 100 is a drop in the ocean, £290 million of taxpayers' money, and not a single person has gone. So that's a gimmick. I'm interested in rolling up our sleeves and taking the practical measures that will actually deal with this difficult situation.
Okay, so can I just establish once and for all, because the suspicion is that you would do this deal where we would send those who failed, we would send them back to where they came from. Now, are you suggesting we would send them back to the country that they originally came from, or back, for instance, to France? Because the presumption is that the UK would be required, under a deal struck with our European partners, to take a share of the EU's migrant quota. That basically those countries would say, it's all very well if you want to send some of these people back, but you need to do your bit as well, and that we would then take a proportion of the EU migrants.
Yeah, in direct answer to your question, where an asylum claim has failed, then it's possible to send the person back to the country they came from in the first place. Now, to be fair, that's what is happening with Albania, where there is now a scheme in place. And the government's negotiated that, and that is a step in the right direction. More fast-tracking like that to other countries, I would suggest that India is the next place to start. That is an effective returns agreement. But, you know, frankly, if only 1% of claims are being processed, we're not even anywhere near an effective returns agreement. And, you know, today we're going to waste a day of parliamentary time arguing about a scheme that won't work, and with a war going on in the Tory party where they've lost any sense of what's going on in the real world. Many people watching this will be going Christmas shopping in the coming days. They've got less money. They're concerned about the second Christmas in a row where they're struggling. Waiting lists for the NHS have now gone to 7.7 million, and next year we turn into the new year, 2024, and 2.3 million people will come off their fixed-rate mortgages and be paying hundreds of pounds more a month because of the damage the government's done to the economy.
It's the biggest issue. But to nail this once and for all, no quid pro quo deal where we accept more migrants in return for cooperation from the EU on returns?
I'm interested in returning people who shouldn't be here. And I think that we start by sending people back to the country they came from if their asylum claim has failed, because by definition, it's safe for them to return. Now, we did have a deal with the EU. We've lost that deal, and that means we can't even return people to France. Yes, I would want to look at that, but it would be secondary to getting people back to the country they came from in the first place.
OK, that sounds like there is a quid pro quo deal up for negotiation once you hope to get into government.
The problem with that is you get into the problem where the Tories just then make up numbers that have got nothing to do with reality. But look,
well,
I mean,
we don't know. We don't know what the numbers would be because you haven't negotiated a deal. Would you? I mean, what would, if their numbers are made up? What is the number that we would accept?
Well, the proposition is we want to return people who shouldn't be here, and that's what I would be driving at. And there's no agreement on any numbers with anyone. The 100,000 number that the Tories have made up is precisely that, completely and utterly made up. And, you know, if they were to actually spend their time working on smashing the gangs, processing the claims and getting return agreements in place instead of making things up about the Labour Party, arguing with themselves all day today, they're all positioning themselves for the next leadership race. They're not focusing on the country. They're all squabbling like rats in a sack about the future of the Tory party, and that we've seen this over and over and over again for 13 years. I doubt anybody watching this programme would say, in answer to the question, do you feel better off now than you did 13 years ago when this lot came into government? I think the vast majority of people say, no, I don't.
But to be clear, Sir Keir,
absolutely time for change.
But to be clear, just to understand this, you're saying the Tories are making up numbers, but in principle, yes, there could be a deal with the European Union.
They are making up numbers.
But
they
in
are
principle,
pretending
there could be a deal.
That some... well, look, any deal that allows us to process claims and deal with the massive problem we've got is something that we should look at. But in direct answer to your question, are the Tories making this number up? Yes, they absolutely are making this number up. It's fantasy, it's plucked out of thin air, it has no basis in reality.
Can I just ask you one other question about the speech you're making today? You're saying Labour's changed since 2019. You have a pop, not just at Jeremy Corbyn, but also in Miliband, saying that they lost sight of their job description to stand up for working people. One issue in recent weeks where you've taken a very clearly different position from the position Jeremy Corbyn or Ed Miliband would have made is saying that you wouldn't support a ceasefire, calling on Israel to have a ceasefire in the conflict with Hamas. But you had a rebellion, not just 8 shadow ministers, 56 of your MPs voted for the ceasefire against your instruction on a scale much bigger than Tony Blair experienced before government or in that first parliament. Does the scale of that rebellion suggest there's still more work to do for you to persuade your party in parliament to change? Well, the speech I'm doing today is on the
if you can believe it, the 4-year anniversary of the 2019 election, which obviously was a dreadful result for the Labour Party. And what I've done in those 4 years is change the Labour Party fundamentally. And as you said in your question, to return it essentially to its job description, which is to be in the service of working people. And we lost sight of that. We looked inwards to the party. We had arguments within the party instead of facing the country. So I've turned the party inside out so that now, here today, 4 years precisely on from that election, what you see is a Labour Party that is unrecognisable from the Labour Party that lost in 2019. I would say, equally, the Tory party has drifted completely from any sense of what it used to mean to be a Conservative. In direct answer to your question on Israel-Gaza, look, it's a shocking and terrible situation that we can all see on our television screens unfolding. And 10 days or so ago, we did have a cessation of the hostilities, which allowed some hostages to be freed, allowed much more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza, desperately, desperately needed, and was, in my view, a foot in the door for the political settlement that is going to be needed towards a two-state solution. That's what I think we should get back to. And last weekend, I was over at COP28. I had the opportunity to speak to the King of Jordan, to the UN Secretary-General and the Emir of Qatar, who obviously is crucial to all this, about how we get as quickly as possible back to that situation. So in answer to your question, my focus is on getting to that place where hostilities cease as quickly as possible and to the political solution we all want to see. Nobody wants to see innocent civilians in Gaza dying in the way that we're seeing. Nobody wants to see hostages still being held. But we have to have a practical plan. I'm talking to international leaders about how we actually bring that about. And of course, I recognise that others in my party took a different view on that particular vote. Actually, I think, to be fair to everybody in this, the motivation, which is to stop this terrible situation and to reduce the harm as quickly as possible, motivation is the same for all of us. The question is, how do we get there just as swiftly as possible?
Absolutely. Sir Keir Starmer, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.